everybody, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my first Q&A session, which was mostly inspired by Audrey, who is amazing, and I will be popping all of her information all over the screen around me because she is one of the best friends I have made on my blogging internet journey so far, and she's just awesome and amazing, and you should check her out. So a lot of these questions came from her, but some came from other people, and I really hope that you enjoy this video, and yeah. The first question is when I started writing and why I continue to do so. I remember in my childhood writing picture books and coloring them in as a kid a lot, and then writing just sort of fell on the back burner for me. It wasn't until high school that I started to really write. I wrote a 65,000 word fan fiction for one of my favorite movie series. I wonder what that could be. If you know me really well, you already know what my favorite movie is, and that was when I was like, oh, I really like writing. And then after that, I just was like, I think I should just keep doing this for fun because it seems like a talent. So I should just practice it for, you know, as long as it takes, because a lot of people like to do art, so they draw, and that's how they get better. So I'll just keep writing. And in high school, I was very creatively minded, so I had a lot of creative objectives. I wanted to act, sing, do drama, choir, theater, musical theater, all of these things, and writing just sort of was always like what I was good at, but I wanted to do and pursue other things, and I did. And then I went to college and I was majoring in film production. It's hard to talk about this because I don't like to say anything negative about my college or about my university. Basically, I was it was a difficult class because most of the other students enrolled had really expensive equipment. They had access to a plethora of resources that I just didn't have, so all of their projects could be filmed in 4K and edited and premiered, and mine were whatever I could scrape together at the time. And it felt a lot like whoever could invest the most was who would pass. And I essentially had an instructor tell me that I didn't belong, which was very hurtful for me because I had spent 5-6 years studying film and learning about it, and I was just so excited, but it wasn't the right place for me. It wasn't the right time, so I ended up switching my major 6 times after that before I was like, wait, why don't I just go back to writing, like my original skill? Why don't I just go back to that? Because I have already written so much before, why don't I just continue to do that? So that is when I officially made the switch to go to writing in English as a career path. And a lot of people say, oh, that's sad, you gave up on your dream. And it's kind of like, no, I always wanted to write something substantial. I always thought, well, maybe when I'm an actor, I'll write a memoir, or I'll write scripts, or I'll become a famous director, and then I'll use that platform to write a book. But it was always like, I would write in addition to something else. And then I finally just was like, well, why don't I just write instead of trying to juggle all of these different talents and hobbies? Because you can be a jack of all trades and master of none, or you can have a bunch of different hobbies and be really good at one of them. So that is ultimately how I came to the conclusion that I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to work in the industry of publishing and books, and you know, it really was just a journey. When God closes one door, he opens another, and I had a lot of doors closed on me, and this one was the only one that kind of stayed open, so I just dove in, and here I am. And any inspiration that I have is from God, because I'm not very good at coming up with story ideas. Wow, that was a really long-winded answer. So someone else asked me what my writing process is like. Not very good. I have tried many times to be like, oh, I'll make a planner and then I'll write between this time and this time. My first book that I wrote, I think I worked on for 2.5 years before I even finished the first draft, and then that was it. The second book I wrote, I worked on for a year, a little bit under a year, and then I went into the second draft to edit, and the book was bad, and I was like, okay, this book obviously isn't going anywhere. And I only just recently started writing my third book, which this book better work out, because I've shared it with y'all. Y'all know what it is now, so you're counting on me to write it. But I'm not very good at a real writing process. I'm trying to get better at it, though. I've done a lot of reading about writing and writing about reading. So, you know, I'm really trying to hone in on that skill and what it takes to become a good storyteller. Of course, that's also with me juggling jobs and schoolwork and homework and college. I get writing in when I can, but I don't really know that I have a process. I have an outlining process that I have a video on that's very different from pretty much everyone else's outlining process, or so I'm told by you guys, because I'm a very visual person. So if I am outlining something, if I'm going to write something, I need to have something visual to help me keep track of where I'm going. I need to have like a physical roadmap. So currently I have a giant poster board that is my outline. In the past, I've done clothing lines of index cards and post-it notes. Before that, I have done notebooks and just written down ideas and drawn pictures and Pinterest boards. So I would say that my process is very visual, if that answers that question. Question number 3 is, what is your first memory of a childhood book? When I was a kid, I had this book. It was like this thick, and the pages were made of like wood, you know? It was like that big, and it was like little wooden cards, and it was called Hats, Hats, Hats. And it was about Minnie Mouse trying to figure out what hat she was going to wear on a date with Mickey. And I remember that book just because I wore hats a lot as a kid. I was bald until I was like really old. I was bald for a really long time. I was born preemie, so I was always wearing hats so that I didn't get like sunburnt, or, you know, just so I didn't look bald. I like the hat. So yeah, that is the first book that I remember reading. Question number 4 is, have you ever dreamed a story before writing it? And to be honest, most of the books that I've written have been inspired by a dream, whether that's a physical like dream I've had while I'm sleeping or a daydream that I've had. Most of my stories are inspired by a dream, just like one moment in a fantasy world that I'm like, book! And that's probably why I always say I don't come up with any of my own book ideas, because I feel like that's my subconscious mind doing it for me. Question number 5 is, do all stories need a happy ending? And my answer to that is no. I love when books have a tragic ending that make me cry and just think, oh my goodness, these people, like, wow, heartwarming, you know? Because there is a certain redemption in tragedy, I would say. It's kind of like when your main character dies fighting to protect someone that they love. It's very sad and tragic and not the ending you hoped for, but it means something, and it's emotional, and it says something about the character and their relationships with each other. And I really like tragic, dramatic stories. Question number 6 is, what inspired me to write my current WIP? And my current WIP is a biblical fiction book set during the time of Christ. And I would have to say that my own family inspired me to write this book, because I've always been very intrigued by family dynamics and family relationships, and I've had a lot of incredibly strong family role models that I look up to. If I was to write a contemporary book about my family, I'm not sure that it would work, because my family is not old-fashioned, but how do I put this? It's different from, you know, a modern family. And so when I read biblical fiction novels and just the relationships that family meant to each other and the respect that people have for family and their closeness to their relatives, it really, to me, was like, I felt connected to those relationships. I felt like I could identify with that. And so I've always said, if I was ever going to write a book about my family, it would have to be biblical fiction, because it would work so well. So it's not about my family, but a lot of the characters are conglomerations of traits in my family members. My WIP is specifically about a young girl coming of age during the time of Christ, at a time when women weren't exactly, you know, everyone knows it. They weren't, important necessarily. It's one of the most interesting parts about the gospel is that the first account of Jesus post-resurrection comes from a woman, and in that time, a woman's testimony was seen as worthless. So it was a real turning point for women, in my opinion, the way I see it as. It was incredible. My story is about a girl coming of age in a time where girls weren't really meant to be seen or heard. And, she comes across this guy called Jesus, and it just changes her life. And of course, her aunts and uncles and different role models also play a part in changing her life and shaping her and molding her into the woman that she became, which is a lot kind of inspired for me by my own growing up years. And I really feel like I'm at a place where I can write about that, and it makes me extremely happy to do so. The next question is, if you could force everyone in the world to read one book, what book would that be? And my answer is all of them. I can't pick one. My top books are Not My Will by Francina Arnold. That one is tragic, but beautiful. It's a beautiful tragedy that is beautiful. Counted with the Stars by Connell Cosette. Yeah, The Pharaoh's Daughter by Misu Andrews. Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. How can I not mention that one? Carry On, Mr. Bowditch. And The Crimson Cord by Jill Eileen Smith. Is that all? I'm looking at my bookshelf. Hold on. Yeah, I think that's a fair amount of books that I would force the universe to read, but I can't pick one. I'm sorry, I can't. But those are definitely like my top all-time favorite books of all time. I think I've mentioned them before on this channel, so you got that there. Someone else asked, what's some advice that you have for people that are trying to decide whether or not to pursue writing? And my answer to that is, don't ask me, because I really didn't decide that I wanted to become a writer. I just became a writer by necessity. Like, I needed something to do with my life, and all the other things that I had, thought would be a good path for me just weren't working out. But also I did want to become a writer. So I have a couple different opinions on this. Just do it, but be open to criticism and get help. You're not the best writer in the world. I know you think you are, but you are not, and no one is. Everyone's first draft is not as good as they think it is. So find some critique partners, make some friends out there, get beta readers, get editors. You're going to have to invest, but it's going to be worth it, unless 10 years from now you want to look back and be embarrassed at something that you published. So yeah, just make friends, share your work with other people. I know it's embarrassing at first to be like, I wrote a book, what do you think? But it'll help you in your writing journey to not be so alone and to be able to improve your craft to the best that it possibly can be. And my next question to this kind of is more of a answer in terms of, like, if you're younger and you're looking to go to college to major in writing, I would definitely make sure that you get a hands-on experience with what your college's program is going to be like. I didn't know what my college programs were going to be like when I started in film production, and I wish that I had known more, because that was a really difficult semester of my life that I wouldn't want to go back and do over again. And, dealing with a creative major in college is very difficult, because creativity comes from your soul and it's open to interpretation. And if a professor doesn't like it and you're not good at receiving criticism, it's going to tear you down, and you're just going to be like, well, I guess I'm going to quit now and become a starving artist that doesn't have any talent because my professor in college said I didn't, and that's gonna suck. So yeah, so that is my answer to that question. Really hard, complicated answer, but just make sure that you have a support system. And then if you're going to college for it, make sure that you are looking into your college's program to make sure that it's really the right one for you and that you're going to get the best education that you possibly can out of that program. And that just goes for all creative people in general. Find your group, find your people, and build that system around yourself and put yourself in that environment where you know that you're going to be pushed towards something greater that's going to be constructive for you. Someone else asked, what influenced you as a child to grow your love of biblical stories? The first movie I ever saw was The Prince of Egypt in theaters, the first movie I ever saw in theaters. And my mom took me to it when I was like, I'm pretty sure I was only like a couple months old, or I was a baby, and I couldn't talk. I was a baby. I didn't really do anything, and my whole family was going, and she just thought she would take me so that she could go and see it, and then I would probably just fall asleep or something while it was on. And I am told that I was sitting in the theater. I don't know if I was in like a car seat or if I was sitting on my mom's lap or something, but I was sitting up, and I was just sitting straight back, mesmerized by the Prince of Egypt. And my mom just thought it was hilarious, like, that I was watching this movie, that I was cognizant of this movie. And then that just became my obsession. As soon as it came out on like VHS, I remember watching it and rewinding it and watching it and rewinding it and watching it and rewinding it. And then watching it while I rewound it, because the VHS life. And just being so captivated by it. It was my favorite movie of all time. It still probably is. I still watch it whenever I've had a bad day, or if I've had a good day, or if I'm just needing to be inspired again. I always go back to the Prince of Egypt. It's like the best. Then I had this children's Bible that I have. I had the Bible in pictures for little eyes. You can see it's very torn up and damaged, and the cover's falling apart. It has all the Bible stories and then beautiful illustrations for each one. These pictures still inspire me to a degree. And I just was always so captivated by these images of Bible characters and, like Jesus at the temple and Jesus teaching. And I still love them. I'm still captivated by them, even though this is a children's Bible from like the 90s. And then it didn't occur to me again until high school, when I read my first biblical fiction book by Misu Andrews, which was The Pharaoh's Daughter. It was a adaptation of basically the Prince of Egypt story. So it's about the mother of Moses, or rather the Egyptian princess who took in Moses. I specifically remember picking that book up because I loved Prince of Egypt so much, and I was like, yes! And that's when it was like, it hit me. And then I loved Christian fiction. I started obsessing over it and buying it all the time. And then I always said I'm never going to be able to write biblical fiction because it is too amazing. It would just be so difficult for me to write. God already knows what you can and cannot handle. And he placed the inspiration for a biblical fiction novel on my heart. So apparently the man upstairs thinks I can do it. And that is how I ended up loving biblical stories and biblical fiction and just the Bible in general, I guess. It's a long story. I'm sorry. Next question is, how do you handle constructive feedback? And I'll be honest with you, I didn't for a very long time. And then I think I've just gotten to a point in my writing where I know that it's bad. And that's why I crave that constructive feedback, and I'm not going to get upset over it. I'm just going to be like, yes, I want you to tell me what I've done, because I want to make this better. It's not going to hurt me. It's just going to bounce off of me, because I realize that this isn't just like an arts and crafts project for me. It's bigger than that. It's something I want to share with the world one day. And so if I'm going to share it with the world, I want to be able to put the best possible version forward. The next question that I have is, which biblical fiction author would you most want to read a contemporary from? And that's hard. I think Misu Andrews, just because Misu Andrews was the author who got me into reading biblical fiction, and I do love biblical fiction more than contemporary, but I do read contemporary. So if you're a contemporary girl or guy, I do read contemporary. I do like contemporary. I just read more of biblical fiction. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just one that I prefer. And I feel like if I was going to read a contemporary, it would have to be by Misu Andrews, because she was like the person who got me into biblical fiction. She's the author who got me obsessed with it. And I feel like if anyone could do a contemporary really, really well, with the same kind of depth and love and passion and that goes with biblical fiction that I love so much that I would want to see in a contemporary, it would be Misu Andrews. The next question is, any funny anecdotes as a part of your writing journey? And yes, I'm not sure if I should do this for an entirely separate video or if I should just share it with you now. I think I'm going to go ahead and share it with you now. Basically, what happened was I was really struggling with deciding, like, do I really want to be a writer? should I do this, or should I just like kind of hide this passion away so that no one knows that I like to write? You know, I was kind of an embarrassed and shy writer. And so I was like, I'm going to write a letter to, because I had heard someone say, you know, like, if you're struggling, reach out to a fellow author. Authors love to get emails and letters from you, so just like reach out to them and just see what happens. And I had heard that, and I was like, well, okay, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to write several different emails to all of my favorite authors. So I went onto the internet, I found all of their professional business email addresses, and I saved those in a note on my computer. And then I went into Word and I typed a separate letter to each one. And then I saved the Word document and I didn't look at it again. And then a week later, I think, I was like, you know what? I think I'm finally ready. I think I've gathered up the courage. I have mustered up the strength that I need to send these letters. And I was copying and pasting them, and I sent them all away. And then I found out that I had accidentally sent the wrong letters to the wrong people. And so everyone wrote back and they were like, I'm not sure if this letter was meant for me, but you sound really sweet, so thank you. And then I was just mortified. I was like, oh no. I wrote an entire letter praising one author's book and how good it was, and then I sent it to a completely different author, and I was just so embarrassed. And then I wrote them back, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do this. And then they were like laughing, and they're like, oh, well, it's okay, I've done that. I'm sure that's something that I would totally do too. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, authors are human too. And then after that, after eventually sending them the right emails and having these conversations with writers, I was like, wow, this is a community that I really think I could be a part of. So, embarrassing story, but good conclusion at the end. Ooh. If I could collab with any author, who would it be, and what setting from any of their books would you choose? I would definitely want to collab with Connellan Cosette or Jill Eileen Smith. And if I was collabing with Connellan Cosette, I would want to be in the world of her most recent book, which is A Light on the Hill, and I highly recommend that. And I think if I was going to work with Jill Eileen Smith, I would definitely love to go back and revisit something in the time frame of her Wives of the Patriarchs series, because that was my favorite series by Jill Eileen Smith. And I would just love to go back to that time because I find that whole thing so fascinating and intriguing to me. So, yeah. Good question. I think I'm losing my voice and my camera's running out of battery anyway, so this is probably a good time for me to end the video. But thank you so much for watching. If you did watch, I really appreciate it. I am so glad that I did get to answer so many questions. If you're new here and you like this video, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe for more bookish and writing related content, as well as checking out my Instagram at Jenna Van Mourik and going ahead and following that so you can keep up with my life on a daily basis for what I'm reading and writing all hours of the day. I'm very active on Instagram. And of course, go ahead and check out my blog at www.jennavanmourik, where I document the books I read, review them, and then of course document my writing process. You can also find my contact information, and a bunch of social media handles are going to pop up at the end of this video, so be sure to go ahead and check those out as well. I would love to connect with you and talk about writing, so go for it. I'm a person too. Yeah, again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! Bye.